Arise, it's a new day. Hear his word, let us pray. The Sunrise Morning Show. A better way to start your day.
It is Thursday, the 16th of October. Let's begin together in prayer. The prayer of abandonment by St. Charles de Foucault. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Father, I abandon myself into your hands. Do with me what you will. Whatever you may do, I thank you. I am ready for all. I accept all. Let only your will be done in me and in all your creatures. I wish no more than this, O Lord. Into your hands I commend my soul. I offer it to you with all the love of my heart, for I love you, Lord, and so need to give myself, to surrender myself into your hands without reserve, and with boundless confidence, for you are my Father. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. It's a better way to start a Thursday, the Sunrise Morning Show here on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. I'm Matt Swaim. Anna Mitchell has news. Paul Lockman at the controls. And up this hour, right after the top of the hour news, we'll talk to Father Robert Nixon, our Benedictine monk friend from Australia, who dials in live for us. And it's kind of wild that we get to talk to him halfway across the world. But he's a liturgical translator, too, and a translator of medieval texts. So looking forward to talking to him. Dr. Jim Schrader has more thoughts on free will and willpower. We'll talk to Gwyneth Thompson-Briggs, a Catholic artist, and a little bit about the Liturgy of the Hours with her. Also pastoral counselor Kevin Prendergast at the end of the hour. So do stay with us if you can. Right now, it is 2 minutes past. Here's Anna Mitchell with news.
Good morning. The Senate has turned away a funding measure that would have ended the federal government shutdown once again. The Republican-backed measure failed to be passed for a ninth time yesterday. It came after President Trump said he would cut programs favored by Democrats, with a full list of targeted programs expected tomorrow. Meanwhile, U.S. service members did get paychecks this week despite the government shutdown. The White House released a memo from President Trump directing the Pentagon to use unspent funds to pay the military. Those funds will be replenished once the shutdown ends. Speaker Mike Johnson warned that the move was simply a, quote, temporary fix. President Trump says he has authorized the CIA to take action in Venezuela. Mark Mayfield reports.
Trump spoke at the White House.
I authorized for two reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy.
In confirming the authorization on Wednesday, Trump told reporters that the second reason was the amount of drugs coming in from Venezuela. He was asked about the potential CIA operations just hours after the New York Times reported the agency had been given the green light to conduct lethal operations inside the country. The U.S. has struck several boats in the Caribbean as part of its campaign against alleged drug smugglers from Venezuela. I'm Mark Mayfield.
The patriarchs and heads of churches in Jerusalem are calling for expanded peace negotiations in the Holy Land. They released a joint statement this week rejoicing that a ceasefire is in place between Israel and Hamas. At the same time, they said, quote, "We continue to view with great concern the increasing violence against local communities in the West Bank in connection with settlement expansions there," end quote. They go on to call for an end to the occupation of both the West Bank and Gaza, leading to the establishment of a Palestinian state. The Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors has released its second annual report today. From Vatican Radio, Devin Watkins reports.
The second annual report on safeguarding policies in the Catholic Church, published on Thursday by the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors, offers an operational vademecum drawn up by actively listening to those who have personally suffered abuse. The guidelines are intended to help ecclesial communities implement restorative measures, following step by step the reporting process and calling for its general simplification. Recommendations include an initial informed listening, access to information about one's case, and economic, psychological, and spiritual support. All of this is to be accompanied by transparent official statements that acknowledge the harm caused and publicly assume responsibility. Archbishop Theobald Verni, president of the Pontifical Commission, whom Pope Leo XIV appointed in July, described this mission as a perpetual pilgrimage. Among the key issues that emerged were the need for a more listening church and the lack of clear structures for reporting and whistleblowing. The report analyzes the concept of reparation, which includes both monetary reimbursement and psychological and spiritual support. The Church is thus called to issue official statements that acknowledge the harm caused and publicly accept its own responsibility. Victims, says the report, should not be left in uncertainty regarding the assumption of responsibility by perpetrators of abuse and by those who enabled or covered it up. The Commission's report proposes the creation of an international academic network involving Catholic universities specializing in human rights, abuse prevention, and safeguarding. The final part of the document focuses on the progress of the Memorare initiative set up in 2022. It has gathered dedicated funds to support churches in the Global South with limited resources in an effort to accompany survivors of clerical sexual abuse. I'm Devin Watkins.
The Blue Jays are now on the board in the American League Championship Series after bashing the Seattle Mariners 13-4 in Seattle yesterday. Toronto trails the best-of-7 series 2-1 heading into Game 4 in Seattle today. The NLCS also resumes today between the Dodgers and Brewers in Los Angeles. LA is ahead 2-0 and flipped home field advantage after earning a pair of tough road wins. And the beloved longtime chaplain of the Loyola Chicago basketball team will be laid to rest today. Sister Jean died last week at the age of 106. She had only just recently officially retired from her role with the basketball team. There was a visitation last night, and her massive Christian burial will take place this morning at 10 a.m. Central Time at the Madonna della Strada Chapel on campus. The funeral will be live streamed at luc.edu/Sister Jean. Spell out sister.
So, Anna Mitchell, I don't even know how to count how many stories you've had in the past year or more of some religious sister over the age of 100 finally passing away. All I can say is that nuns live for a very, very long time.
And rightfully so.
There have been actually, I don't remember everything about the things that came across my purview when I was not yet Catholic, but I remember somebody did like a study. It was like National Geographic or Time or something. I can't remember about, why is it that nuns live so long? And now I understand. I don't need like a magazine article. Just having been around them, I'm like, I understand why these ladies live a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. Do your prayers. Mm-hmm. Eat with your family. Mm-hmm. Serve somebody.
Exactly.
These are things that
these are
contribute to longevity.
They are the important things. May Sister Jean rest in peace. Today is Thursday, October the 16th. It is the feast of St. Gerard, patron saint of expectant mothers. Pray for us. Father Robert Nixon back with us now on the Sunrise Morning Show. He's a Benedictine monk at New Norcia in Australia, translator of the Tan Resurrection series. We've been going through Solitude and Silence, the Cloister of the Heart by Thomas à Kempis. Father, welcome back.
Thank you, Eddie. It's great to be with you.
It is great to have you. And today we are going to be discussing what Thomas had to say about the love of solitude. Now, Father, I might be making a little too much of this, but the word love is stronger than, say, enjoy. So it's one thing
Absolutely.
to enjoy solitude, but what does it mean to love solitude?
Now, yes, this is it's actually a very interesting choice of words. And he gives the example, first of all, of our Lord Jesus Christ. And in the Gospel, we're often told that he desired solitude, that he went off into the solitude, or in some cases, that he wanted solitude, but because of the crowds that were pursuing him, he couldn't have it at that particular time. And now our love of solitude is not just a matter of enjoying a bit of peace and quiet, although that in itself is perfectly a wonderful thing to do, but it's because our love of solitude is always linked with the encounter with God, with the divine, and with the inner reality of the self. And even although that encounter takes different degrees, by placing ourselves in solitude, we're really opening ourselves up to that. And so I think that love is a fair enough choice. It's a good choice of words here, that we shouldn't only enjoy a moment of solitude, but we should actually look forward to it. We should desire it. We should really yearn for it, because it's in those moments that we have the opportunity of coming very, very close to God.
He writes, "You will surely be with Jesus if you too flee from the crowds and seek out the desert places. And when you find..."
Absolutely. And
go ahead.
As I mentioned, we know that Jesus himself sought out these desert places. And, I think, Annie, this is partially a matter of the mindset of the person concerned. If you look forward to moments of solitude, to time of solitude and places of solitude, if you think about these as places where you are going to meet Jesus, then you in fact will meet Jesus there. And so much of what we experience at a spiritual level has to do with our disposition towards the event or practice or situation. In the same way, if a person receiving the Blessed Sacrament of the Eucharist goes with the strong disposition that it is a real encounter, a unitive encounter with Christ himself, then they will experience that. And this is not to say that he's not there if you're not disposed in this way, but if we look forward to silence as an opportunity of meeting with Christ and love it accordingly, then I believe that will come about. We will actually experience that.
Yeah, and he goes on, which I think is so interesting, as he talks about finding and seeking out desert places. He writes, "And when you find such a place in your soul, let it be as a secret garden of delight to you. Guard and protect it most carefully." Now, that is an interesting line, because guard and protect could actually be, in biblical terms, translated till and keep, which is what God tells Adam to do in the Garden of Eden.
To take good care of it, and I think this is reflects the very great insight of Thomas à Kempis into human nature and the way we work. That if we have a place of solitude, and if we regard it as our own special secret, even if it might not really, really be secret, that other people in fact know we go there for solitude, but to regard it as our special place, to add that element of secrecy, even if it's only a kind of conceptual, not an actual secrecy, which chances are it will be, that it then makes it more precious. And to take care of that space, if we have a special space of prayer, of meditation and so forth, to use that space for nothing else, if at all possible, and to take care that it is clean and nice and has the right kind of images or artwork or environment which are conducive, and to make this a thing which we love and look forward to. And I believe this is one of the secrets of prayer: to look forward to prayer, to love prayer, and when you do that, prayer works much, much better.
Yeah, and he cites St. Jerome, who likens solitude to the Garden of Eden. I was kind of chuckling as I read it, because some, especially in our day and age, would probably liken it more to the Garden of Gethsemane, right? Like this place where I kind of suffer alone.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I guess that's the difference between loving and enduring solitude.
It is indeed, and as I said, so much of what we encounter in life, of the situations we encounter, how we experience them and what they are to us really is a result of our disposition, and exactly the same, we might think about what was the Garden of Gethsemane like, and, we don't know, of course, but, it was probably a decent garden, probably had flowers and greenery and so forth. It was a garden after all. And the Garden of Eden. Now, we can encounter the same situation either as a Garden of Gethsemane or as a Garden of Eden, depending upon how we adjust our perspective and disposition. And the same applies also, of course, to other situations in life. Someone might absolutely dread a situation of silent prayer or so forth, or meditation or being alone. Whereas if they look forward to it, take that positive attitude, see it as an opportunity, see it as something to desire, even to love, then they will experience it differently. They'll experience it positively. And, this is because ultimately our encounter with God doesn't depend on anything in the external world, but on our own proper disposition towards it.
Well, you think about the Garden of Eden, that is the place where man walked with God, or God walked with man. I mean, what more could you want in your prayer life than to walk with God? To walk with God, to converse with God. And, I think this is one of the beautiful images of this garden and of this secret place. So to imagine our times of prayer are almost like secret meetings with God. And, when I say secret, of course, it doesn't mean you don't tell other people about it or you keep it under wraps, but to have the disposition of something to be protected, something to be guarded and taken care of. We've been talking to Father Robert Nixon. You can find the full Tan Resurrection series linked at sunrisemorningshow.com. We are currently going through Solitude and Silence, The Cloister of the Heart by Thomas Kempis. We're only like a few paragraphs into this book, really, and so much to be gleaned from it already. Really already enjoying this series together, Father. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annie. God bless you, and all the best.
You too, Father. Thanks. All right, it's 17 past now on the Sunrise Morning Show. We're back with headlines right after this.
Looking for a life-changing experience that will strengthen your child's faith and immerse them in a joyful Catholic culture? Send them to Christendom College's high school summer program, The Best Week Ever. Located in the beautiful Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, The Best Week Ever has become one of the most popular, well-attended, and highly ranked programs of its kind. To apply or find out more, visit thebestweekever.com. Thebestweekever.com. That's thebestweekever.com.
Support for Sacred Heart Radio is from the Comboni Missionaries, serving the poorest and most abandoned people in 41 countries, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ and preparing local Christian leaders to serve their people, all while helping improve the quality of life with resources like food, clean water, medicine, and schools. Learn more about Comboni Missionaries at combonimissionaries.org. That's combonimissionaries.org.
If you're on the pumpkin spice bandwagon but would rather not shell out $5 for a drink, the Mystic Monks can help you make your own at a fraction of the price.
Their pumpkin spice blend is now available along with all the other normal roasts. And when you buy their coffee after clicking the Mystic Monk link at sunrisemorningshow.com, you earn us a commission.
And don't forget to check out the Sunrise Morning Show mugs and travel mugs in our online store.
You can find the online store and link to Mystic Monk Coffee at sunrisemorningshow.com. That's sunrisemorningshow.com.
EWTN offers the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass live every morning at 8 Eastern and provides you with daily readings to follow along and enrich your experience. To be sure you don't miss out on the daily Mass or to get access to previous recordings, we can send a link to your email inbox every day. It's easy. Visit EWTN.com and click subscribe. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
19 past, here's Anna with headlines.
President Trump says he has authorized the CIA to take action in Venezuela. The Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors has released its second annual report today, and the patriarchs and heads of churches of Jerusalem are rejoicing over the ceasefire in the Holy Land while calling for expanded negotiations aimed at a two-state solution.
News, the top and bottom of each hour, every weekday morning here on the Sunrise Morning Show. Anna Mitchell, I want to thank a very particular listener who sent us something at the radio station yesterday. Mm-hmm. It was not them telling us we were doing a good job. It was not them
even though we
saying,
love those emails.
We love those emails. It was not even them telling us we were doing a bad job. It was them saying, hey, someone sent me this video of Pope Leo the 14th giving like a 20-minute address about the 3 days of darkness and a vision he had. Is this real? And I just want to commend that listener because not enough people do this.
Yeah.
If you see something and you're like, I don't know if this is real, check with someone. Check with anybody before you hit that share button or comment like, oh, this is so amazing and powerful for our times, which is what all the comments said.
The answer is no.
And it was not
real.
Neither was the other stuff on that channel that was this same thing. The Pope auto-generated talking about, like, here's a secret of Fatima you've never heard before. No. Check. Even the Pope has said...
If your Catholic spidey sense comes out, investigate.
Owners are starting to think outside the box to find new customers. You can reach millions of engaged Catholic listeners by underwriting the Sunrise Morning Show. Each weekday morning, listeners across the U.S. and around the globe can hear your message for your business, ministry, or nonprofit on the Sunrise Morning Show. To find out how it works, email me, Leah at sacredheartradio.com. That's Leah at sacredheartradio.com.
It's the season of chunky soup and chunky sweaters, which means it's also pumpkin coffee season. And the Mystic Monks have their pumpkin spice blend in stock and ready for you to enjoy.
And when you go to the Monks through sunrisemorningshow.com, we earn a commission on any flavor coffee or tea that you buy.
Why shell out $5 for a tall PSL when you can customize your own at home and drink it from a Sunrise Morning Show mug that you can find in our online store?
Get a mug and link to Mystic Monk Coffee through sunrisemorningshow.com.
This is Every Day with St. Francis de Sales. Let us always bless the feet of the Savior and say to him, my heart, O Lord, protests my fidelity, and my eyes seek your face. Let us keep our eyes on Jesus Christ to contemplate him, our whole heart intent on nothing less than to please him without limits. Be as far as possible even-tempered, and so indicate your stable resolution to love God unreservedly. God wants to see us faithful in the small matters that he entrusts to us. This is far superior to our burning desire to do big things, which seldom come our way. For Sacred Heart Radio, I am Father Chris Armstrong.
The Sunrise Morning Show continues. I'm Matt Swaim, joined now by Dr. Jim Schrader. We've been going through his book, Turning Free Will into Willpower, the Opportunity of a Lifetime. Dr. Schrader, good morning.
Good morning.
As I'm looking at chapter 27 of your book, I got confused for a second because it starts out this way. The year is 2021, the summer before what would be my final year of college. I was graduating a year early. On top of that, the COVID-19 pandemic had cut my time on campus in half. I was like, wow, Dr. Schrader, I thought you were older than this. And then I realized this is actually another reflection from someone else on free will. And I find it fascinating because we don't get that many windows into mature reflection on how COVID affected those students who were in high school and college at the time.
Yeah, this is actually my co-author's reflection here. So it gives you a sense of what was going on, when college was happening, everything else like that. And it was really neat. When Vanessa was able to kind of provide that and we were constructing the book, I thought to myself, you know what, this is a really kind of a good viewpoint that others might not have considered. But, COVID really changed your life a ton. And I couldn't imagine myself, by the way, I graduated college in 1999. So it comes a little bit after my experience, but I think one of the things right off the bat that it was really good to remember is that so much of our reflections have to do with things that we can't control. And the question is, like, how do we look at those things? You know, how do we perceive? Obviously, the pandemic was something that changed the world at that point, and there's many different perspectives that came through the pandemic, and it was a difficult time. But you know, that's part of life, and that's part of why this is so important. And this is kind of this is the end cap, right? This is the end of our willpower kind of acronym here. And the reason why we really feel like reflection is so necessary is that part of how you learn how to go forward is looking back, right? I mean, we have to kind of learn from what happened, both in things that we can control and can't control. And so this is kind of a neat end cap for our discussion here.
Well, I know you talk about athletes all the time, and I've talked to so many athletes who their goal was to, you know, play Division I or something like that, you know, maybe get a look from an NFL team or whatever it happens to be. You name the sport, you name the goal, and then they got injured. Completely out of their control, and it forced them to think not only in terms of what is the thing I'm trying to achieve, but what is the kind of person I'm trying to become, and it changed everything for them. And they've become like really incredible people, some of these people I know who wanted to be great athletes and blew out their knee. These are some of the most interesting people I know.
Yeah, that's a great reflection, because that's something that's so difficult to think about how much time and energy they put into that goal, and all of a sudden one movement on the field, right? One particular just what seemingly wasn't significant until the injury occurred really changed things dramatically. And I think that's a big piece of this, is that part of reflection is how do we deal with adversity? You know, what does it teach us about ourselves? What's it teach us about our goals? You know, what's it really teach us about who we are as a spiritual being? Because all of us like to be able to think that, if I put the work in somewhere and I do what I'm supposed to do, the end result is going to play out. And sometimes it does, but very often, you know, I can think of my own life. There's been countless situations where I thought I had the vision of where I was going, and I'm sure this is for you too. And then all of a sudden, you know, week or months go by or a year go by or more, and I realize I'm not the place where I thought I was going to be. And the question is, again, and this is a big piece of reflection, is that I think one of the things that we do in life that we make a big mistake is that we often try to control the things that we have little control over, whether it's our emotions or whether it's the weather or whether it's God or whatever, but we don't put a lot of energy into the things that we actually do have control over, whether it's our intentions or our perspective or our habits or whatever. And I think that's one of the biggest things about reflection. It's one of the reasons why this is such an important part of willpower, is that we really have to reflect about where are we putting our energy into. You know, where are we really, really putting our heart and soul into? Because many times we're going to find out that it's not the place that God designed us to actually have control over.
You know, this is such a great point, and I'm so glad you brought this up, because I've been having some conversations with some friends of mine, one of whom has a master's degree in the philosophy of virtue. We've been trying to break this down a little bit. You know, so often when we go to confession, the things that we're most ashamed of, the big ticket items, the ones that are actually probably the gravest matter, are usually ones where at the end of the day we actually probably have the least free will in regard to, because where we did have free will, whether it was, you know, getting enough rest or not doom scrolling on our phone and just like stopping that, right? Or getting something to eat so we didn't blow our lid on the people around us. Like all those things where we did have like a really good opportunity to exercise free will in a smart and holy way, we bailed on those. So that what we were really doing is diminishing our ability to kind of resist when the time for the big thing came.
I think you got it, Matt. I think that's a huge key, and it's something actually, if you know, your listeners ever go on my website and see the mission that we're all about the idea of trying to understand where God's design lands in this world and how we can really harness God's design to increase our joy and decrease the likelihood of unnecessary suffering. And I think your point is a great one, is that we often see ourselves for the big quote-unquote sins or whatever we end up in confession, but it's actually the day-to-day little things that if we reflected on it further, those are the elements that we have an opportunity to change. Those are the elements where God, you know, like in the Catechism it says, God's leaving you to your own counsel in the hopes that you're going to pursue me in that counsel. But moment to moment, those little things, and I found this in my life in the last 20 years that really have gone through kind of my own transformation, because I just didn't recognize the incredible power that God gives us in those tiny little moments. But when you do, gosh, like the opportunities start to spring all over the place, and you recognize that here is where it lies. But that's when C.S. Lewis says that it's in the present moment that we're closest to eternity, and I'm coming to understand more what he means by that. Because it's here that we start to actually feel God's presence in an eternal way, right now, right, in this place there.
Thanks so much, Dr. Jim Schrader. Find his book linked at sunrisemorningshow.com in the show notes. 1:30, here's Anna with news.
Good morning. The Senate has again failed to pass the Republican-backed funding measure for ending the federal government shutdown. The measure failed to be passed for a ninth time yesterday. It came after President Trump had said he would cut programs favored by Democrats, with a full list of targeted programs expected on Friday. But U.S. service members did get paychecks this week, despite the government shutdown. The White House released a memo from President Trump directing the Pentagon to use unspent funds to pay the military. Those funds will be replenished once the shutdown ends. Speaker Mike Johnson warned the move was a, quote, temporary fix. President Trump says he has authorized the CIA to take action in Venezuela. Mark Mayfield reports.
Trump spoke at the White House.
I authorized for two reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the they came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy.
In confirming the authorization on Wednesday, Trump told reporters that the second reason was the amount of drugs coming in from Venezuela. He was asked about the potential CIA operations just hours after the New York Times reported the agency had been given the green light to conduct lethal operations inside the country. The U.S. has struck several boats in the Caribbean as part of its campaign against alleged drug smugglers from Venezuela. I'm Mark Mayfield.
The patriarchs and heads of churches in Jerusalem are rejoicing over the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, while calling for expanded negotiations aimed at a two-state solution. They released a statement earlier this week, also asking for a, quote, rapid surge into the Gaza Strip and other affected communities of not only food, clean water, fuel, and medical supplies, but also temporary shelters and medical facilities, all as a prelude to a speedily enacted and exhaustive program for the massive clearing and rebuilding of destroyed homes, businesses, and civilian infrastructure, end quote. Meanwhile, the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem says he's been in daily contact with the Christian community in Gaza. Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa told Vatican News, quote, they keep writing that they still cannot believe they were able to sleep through the night without hearing the sound of bombs. During his general audience yesterday, Pope Leo continued to reflect on the resurrection. From Vatican Radio, Deborah Castellano-Lubov reports.
Today we consider how the resurrection of Jesus fulfills the desires of every human heart.
Reflecting on the realities of human experience, the Pope acknowledged the often conflicting emotions and limitations that mark our lives.
We recognize an inexhaustible longing in our hearts for something more.
Pope Leo noted that this tension reveals both our limitations and our deep desire to transcend them. We come to terms with what we lack, while feeling an irrepressible urge to overcome it. We sense deep down, he noted, that something is always missing. What is missing, Pope Leo explained, is Jesus. He is always pure, always present, and always ready for those who thirst. Jesus in his resurrection, the Pope said, has guaranteed a permanent source of life, and he alone can refresh us and offer us peace that endures into eternity. Jesus does not offer answers from above, detached from our pain, the Pope explained. Instead, he walks with us on a road that's often difficult, painful, and mysterious. When our flask is empty, when our thirst is unbearable, the Pope reminded, only he can fill it. The Holy Father emphasized that Jesus is not only our companion, but our destination. Without his love, he said, life can become aimless, a tragic journey without a true end. But we are not to remain fallen, the Pope said. Rather, we are to rise again and stand on our feet. For the risen Christ guarantees that we will arrive and leads us home to a place where we are awaited, loved, and saved.
It is only the resurrected Jesus who can give the true and lasting peace that sustains and fills us.
I'm Deborah Castellano-Lubov.
And the beloved longtime chaplain of the Loyola Chicago basketball team will be laid to rest today. Sister Jean died last week at the age of 106. Her massive Christian burial takes place this morning at 10 a.m. Central Time at the Madonna della Strada Chapel on campus. It will be live streamed. That's the news. It's 35 past.
The Sunrise Morning Show.
We know a lot of you love anything pumpkin-flavored, and others, well, not so much. But the Mystic Monks of Wyoming are taking care of both of you with their coffee.
That's right. Their seasonal favorite pumpkin spice blend is available, along with other normal flavors. And when you purchase them after clicking the Mystic Monk link at sunrisemorningshow.com, you earn us a commission.
While you're at our site, pick up a Sunrise Morning Show mug in our online store.
Get a mug and link to Mystic Monk Coffee at sunrisemorningshow.com.
Business owners are starting to think outside the box to find new customers. You can reach millions of engaged Catholic listeners by underwriting the Sunrise Morning Show. Each weekday morning, listeners across the U.S. and around the globe can hear your message for your business, ministry, or nonprofit on the Sunrise Morning Show. To find out how it works, email me, Leah at sacredheartradio.com. That's Leah at sacredheartradio.com.
An act of love. Lord, teach me to love you as you deserve. Teach me to love you above all else. You created me to glorify you, and I glorify you by reflecting your image and likeness ever more fully. I glorify you not by my own might and striving apart from you, but by my humility, by my receptivity to your light, and by my response to your love. I love you because you are entirely good. It is you who enkindle my soul, who stir my will into act by giving me your own spirit of love. I want nothing but you, no love but yours to reign in my heart. Be my supreme love, my very love, that I may live in you and you in me. Nothing but you, Lord. I want to be filled with you, to see you, to taste and to know and delight in you alone, not for my pleasure, but for your glory, now and forever. For Sacred Heart Radio, I'm Dominican Father Ezra Sullivan.
Happy to welcome back to the Sunrise Morning Show artist Gwyneth Thompson-Briggs. She's illustrator of the new book, A Very Little Office of Compline, Night Prayer for Children, which was compiled and adapted by Bo Bonner. Gwyneth, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I am doing fine. I'm happy to have you back on the show to talk about this. Can you, first of all, before we get into your part of it, can you give us a sense of how Bo Bonner has adapted night prayer for children in this book?
Yes. I think it's pretty unique in the sense that he has not simplified language down to the age group that would enjoy this book, to, 4 or 5-year-old language or even school age. Instead, he's kept the poetry and the rhythm at a really high level. And it's just this wonderful sort of lyrical interpretation of the traditional office of Compline. It's really important that he's maintained that mystery that we all feel when we read the Liturgy of the Hours and realize there's a lot there that's going to take a lifetime of study to really even begin to understand.
Can you give us a little insight? I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this question, if you can read his mind, but why night prayer as opposed to, say, like morning prayer or evening prayer? I mean, why do you think night prayer is particularly suited to children?
Well, I think we all have that experience of trying to get little ones to bed, but aside from just that very practical help of setting aside an evening routine, it's just something that I think is so helpful in when we look back and assess our day. It's akin to looking back and assessing our life and reorienting it every single day and saying, okay, how did it go today? That examination of conscience, but also just kind of seeing our lives in the light of God and making those firm resolutions that do need to happen every evening and morning. But I agree. I think there might be a need for morning prayer for children next.
You talked to Bo about that. Maybe he's already working on it, and we'll be hearing about it sometime soon. But Gwyneth, tell us about how you decided to illustrate this book.
Well, I think it was about 15 years ago, actually, that he had shared. I met him at a monastery. We were taking a Gregorian chant conference, and he was just another attendee and had written a little poem about night prayer, which is what we had been practicing in the workshop for his children. I was really charmed by it, and I also at the same time had gotten a little kit for how to make a Japanese-bound tiny book, and I thought, what can I write in here? I decided to put like a little sketch on each page with a line from his poem, sent it off to him to give to his kids. And now 15 years later, I'm married with my own kids, and this is actually about the third version of the book. It took a while to really get the vision that I wanted to, but now I'm just so pleased with the final result, and don't mind that it was a 15-year process to develop.
Well, it's certainly worth it. I'm glad to have this book in my hands, I have to say, for my own children. Now, I don't want to knock or denigrate the more cartoony illustrations that we find in most children's books or even Catholic ones. I understand why artists go that route with children's books, but and I would say you're a very talented artist. I love your work, and I'm sure you would have had no problem doing cartoons for this book to illustrate the prayers and the poems that Bo has written. But why did you choose to not go that route?
I really wanted to prepare children to really love and appreciate the sort of unusual beauty of illuminated manuscripts, and as they grow up and see it, that will become just kind of a natural part of their visual patrimony. And then also traditional representational art that continues that Western tradition up to our modern day. Yeah, it was really important to me not only to represent something beautiful that was harmonizing with our various Western art traditions, but I wanted there to be a certain density of detail so that the kids could really feel absorbed and really start to learn to meditate as they look at each page.
Yeah, it's a real opportunity for Visio Divina, particularly if you have little children that you are a parent reading these prayers and having them pray along. Having these visuals is really helpful in that regard.
Yeah, it was such a learning process for me as I was doing research for these illustrations, because I think, we all fall into that trap of those of us who have not learned history very well of thinking that, the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, and, feeling a little bit superior as we look back. But as I studied so many of the illustrations from various books of ours that had been illuminated like the 13th century around there, I was just struck by this just wild, beautiful imagination, and so much of that was spawned by the text itself. So the text itself, I think, lends itself to the style.
Yeah, and certainly on one page, just for listeners' benefits here, for each of the pages of little prayers and poems that are in here, there is an illustration that is very much in line with the words of the prayer that you're praying on the opposite page, but then underneath that, you include images of religious who are praying. Why did you feel that was necessary? Why did you want to include those?
Yeah, well, I wanted to link this really profound interior life with the reality of the external form of the church at prayer. And the best illustration of that is, of course, contemplative and active priests and nuns. And monks, and also just on an aesthetic level, there are so many beautiful habits. Many of these orders have died out, and we're at this juncture where we're about to forget the real beauty and purpose of the habit itself. Just recently, I'm working on a large painting for a church, and I was trying to research how to represent the habit correctly for a saint that was represented. And I had to go to archives, and they were bringing out one little fragment of the habit at a time, and I put it on a model. And once it was all on her, it was amazing. There were older nuns that were watching the process who remembered wearing that habit, 60 years ago, and they were just tweaking it to get it just right, and you could just see how much they love that beautiful habit.
Well, thank you so much, Gwyneth Thompson-Briggs. She is the illustrator of A Very Little Office of Compline, Night Prayer for Children. It's from Tan Books and linked at sonrisemorningshow.com. Matt, just quickly, as we know that Compline prepares us for sleep, with which the church always looks at as kind of a mini death, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Prendergast, who's going to be on with us in just a few moments, reminded me this morning that today is the 5th anniversary of the death of our good friend, Father Matthew Gamber.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to take a moment to thank God for the life that was Father Gamber. And
where all did he report for us from?
Oh my gosh, all over the place. He was at every
Youth
World Youth Day.
He was our correspondent. He was one of those Jesuits who you never knew where he was going to pop up next.
But he was very, very much devoted to youth ministry. That is for sure. And
he worked in Tampa at a Jesuit high school.
One of my favorite interviews with him, I remember after we learned of his death, it was the next Monday was the Feast of the North American Martyrs. And he loved all of those French names. And we shared, I remember sharing that interview that he had done many years ago for us on the French martyrs of North America. And so anyway, I just wanted to give a little shout out to Father Matt Gamber, who I remember in my prayers every day still. Him and Dr. Kevin Vost and Father Ted Ross.
All of our Sunrise Morning Show listeners who have gone to their reward, and there actually have been many since we've been around for, pushing a couple decades now.
Yeah, we're getting close.
We got our own army of intercessors connected with our family, and also an army of people that we are reminded to pray for.
Yeah. Amen. Well, may Father Gamber rest in peace.
Indeed. What a guy. What a guy.
What a guy.
A true son of St. Ignatius. 14 till, Kevin Prendergast joins us next.
Are you paying high prices with traditional health insurance that pays for things that violate your conscience? There is an alternative. Solidarity Health Share, a Sunrise Morning Show underwriter, is a community of faithful individuals and families that never share into immoral medical services. Solidarity is not insurance. It's a not-for-profit medical cost-sharing ministry. They offer an alternative way to fund your medical expenses that's ethical, affordable, and more comprehensive. As a member, you choose the doctors you want to see by presenting your Solidarity member ID card. Solidarity allows you to remain faithful to Roman Catholic teachings, and you will never share into immoral medical procedures like abortion, sterilization, or contraception. Memberships start as low as $85 per month for singles and $512 for families. To learn more, 844-313-4999. That's 844-313-4999 or solidarityhealthshare.org.
Waking up with Mystic Monk Coffee is definitely a better way to start your day. Not only are you getting a great cup of coffee, but your purchase helps support the life of the Carmelite monks of Wyoming.
And your purchase can also help our work. All you need to do is go first to sonrisemorningshow.com. When you click the Mystic Monk link on the side of the page, we earn a commission.
Support the monks and support the Sunrise Morning Show. Click the Mystic Monk link at sonrisemorningshow.com.
That's sonrisemorningshow.com.
Beyond Damascus with Dan Demite and Aaron Richards is our show for young adults.
Everybody's talking about encounter. Everybody's talking about that mountaintop experience. What we fail to often talk about is what happens after. What happens beyond that Damascus moment.
Jesus Christ is calling all of us to be missionary disciples, disciples of Jesus who are on mission to bring the kingdom of God here and now on this earth.
Beyond Damascus with Dan Demite and Aaron Richards, Saturday at 8 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
I'm Deacon Harold Burke-Sibley. Join me for Beacon of Truth today at 4 p.m. Eastern.
On the next Beacon of Truth, St. John Paul the Great and Soulful Psalm 56.
Now back to the Sunrise Morning Show.
The Sunrise Morning Show continues, and this is one of those interviews that I think is going to be targeted to a lot of our listeners in particular. I think some people are going to feel seen. Kevin Prendergast has got some great stuff to share today. He, of course, is a licensed counselor with decades of experience in training seminarians and lay pastoral ministers, as well as in private practice. Kevin, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Matt. So I brought up this topic of volunteering and how we need to have balance and set some limits and boundaries.
Well,
so
you probably already you know this, that the Sunrise Morning Show listenership is some of the most generous and giving people in the world. These people are deeply involved in their parishes. They're deeply involved in caregiving in their own families. They've got big hearts and a lot of love. And sometimes they get burnt out and they don't know how to say no. So
we don't hear about that enough. So I remember an old Jesuit brother said to me once about somebody that had kind of a fall from grace because, and the brother's comment, he was a simple guy, but he said, well, you know what his problem was? He give more than he have to give.
There you go.
Always struck me. So here we go. So from psychology, like there's a bunch of studies, and I found some other ones for this segment that, research clearly shows that volunteering, getting out of ourselves, helping somebody else can have good psychological side effects. It can reduce our sense of depression. It can give us meaning and purpose. We can get joy in watching others that are helped. We have a greater sense of connection and community with other volunteers. And a couple of the studies, one for teenagers and one for seniors, for retired people doing volunteering, it really came up with the same thing, that one-off service projects, like a one-day thing, it's valuable to a certain extent, but you really get more value out of volunteering over a period of time when we have sustained effort in a project to help others. Now, the downside of that is, and this is what we don't talk about too much, certainly we want to be another Christ out there. We want to be, he's all about loving others and extending our hand. But the dangers, what are some of the dangers? So one is we oftentimes get drafted into a volunteer role. There's an empty space. Somebody says, we really need you. And we don't necessarily do a lot of due diligence at the front end. Like, what is this all going to involve? The other part is we should certainly, any kind of volunteer commitment that we take on, we need to pray about it first to see if that's the greatest good. And we need to run it by other people in our family and ask the hard question, how am I going to balance this with all the other commitments I already have? So I think that right at the front end, that's tough. Another aspect of volunteering, if we're doing a volunteer project that involves us in nursing homes, bringing communion to hospitals, doing home visits with St. Vincent de Paul, sometimes we run into people that are suffering a lot, physically or emotionally because of their poverty, mental health. And that can be very discouraging. We can get overwhelmed, and we don't often anticipate that. Nobody really prepares us for that. So we need to take stock of that and find we've got enough in our tank to keep going.
Yeah.
The big one, go ahead, Matt.
First of all, as you're saying all this, it reminds me of something that our station manager at Sacred Heart Radio, Bill Levitt, once said, and he says from time to time, the joke that if you want something done, ask a busy person.
Yep.
Because some people are just the kind of people who will do everything no matter what you say. But the other thing, too, as you're launching into this, Kevin, is there are probably some people who've tried to help, but there's somebody that they tried to help in their life who they don't know how to create a safe distance from, and who are always in the mix with them, and there's some boundaries that are getting violated. So I know that's part of this, too.
Yeah, that's part of it, too, that people can become clingy or too dependent. We're not really about trying to create dependency on other people. I think a systemic problem, and we certainly have this in the church, but also in other volunteer organizations I've been part of, is there's an unspoken expectation that once you volunteer, you're in it for life. So I've had a couple of things in the church and other arenas where I've said after a long period of time, and things in my life changed, and I had other priorities I needed to attend to at work and the family. And people pretty much told me, well, you can't quit. And I'd have to say, wait a second, I'm a volunteer. So, sometimes we get to that point if we're feeling burned out, if we're starting to dread going to the next volunteer opportunity, if we're just too stretched, if other people in our life are complaining that we're not paying attention to what other priorities, those are signs we need to pay attention to. So at the beginning, Matt, somebody taught me this a long time ago, is rather than say an immediate yes, if somebody asks me to do something, say I need to think about it at least for a day or two. I'm going to pray about it. I'm going to talk with my wife and my family about it. And people don't like that. And so, no, I need to know right now you're going to do it. And, the answer my friend told me is, well, if you need the answer right now, the answer is definitely no. If you give me to tomorrow, it could be no, but it could be yes, but I need some time to think about it. And
that sounds pretty fair. I mean, I think a reasonable person should be able to accept that.
Yeah, and maybe to think about, I can volunteer for a certain amount of time, and then I'm going to reevaluate with a spiritual guide, a spiritual director, with people that are close to me. And I need to ask the Lord, do I need to continue with this ministry? Is that where you want me to be, even though it's very difficult? A final point, Matt, is this is about optics or how things look. And I know this is very true of the church. It's the same people doing everything. It's your point, ask a busy person. And from the pews, that doesn't look, I think the impression people get is they've got it all wrapped up. They're not really open to new volunteers. Nobody's really inviting me personally to step up. They have a little clique. And so, why bother? I'm going to move on. And that's not really unfortunate, whether that's extraordinary ministers of the Eucharist or people doing hospital visits, anything at church, being on the finance commission. So we're not in this for life. So we need to reevaluate and ask the Lord what he wants us to do and get our tank filled up again through prayer and other activities in our life.
Well, and in the case of a parish, things just go better when there's more people involved and it's spread out in a lot of different ways rather than having the same 4 people who get everything dumped on them. So, yeah, it's a wonderful reminder to those who are deeply involved to have some good boundaries, and those who are not really involved to think, hey, maybe there's something I could be doing. And here's how I can do it without being sucked in for life. Great advice. Thanks so much, Pastoral Counselor Kevin Prendergast. We'll talk to you soon.
God bless.
Another full hour coming up on many of these EWTN affiliates. It's 3 minutes till.
Arise, it's a new day. Hear his word, let us pray. The Sunrise Morning Show. Better way to start your day.
It is Thursday, the 25th. I'm sorry, the 25th. The 16th of October in the 25th year of the year 2000. Let's begin in prayer. How about that? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, send understanding to guard us. Fill our hearts and our homes with mercy and justice. Lead us on the path toward perfect love. Keep our minds and our tongues from gossip and slander, and surround us with people striving toward goodness. O Lord our God, as we travel through the hours of this day, let your word be a lamp to our feet, so that we may always follow in the footsteps of our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son. And glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Sometimes people ask, what's the hardest part about doing a morning radio show? And I would just say, and Anna Mitchell would affirm this, it's remembering what day it is and what time it is. That's the hardest part of doing a morning radio show. You nail that, everything else is cake. It is the Sunrise Morning Show here on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. We're a production of Sacred Heart Radio in Cincinnati, and we come to you through the expansive EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network, and we're glad to do so. Up this hour, we got all kinds of fun stuff to get to. Dr. John Bergsma continues our series on the scriptural roots of the year of Jubilee. We are in the Jubilee Year of Hope. Rita Heikenfeld has a gumbo recipe, and I don't know what the weather change is like where you are, but this is going to be excellent, and I intend to try it. Gary Michuta will join us from Hands On Apologetics, also Courtney Brown and Ruah Woods. He'll talk theology of the body and artificial intelligence, so you'll want to be tuning in for that at the end of the hour. Right now, it is 2 minutes past news of service of Central Fabricators and centralfabricators.com. Here's Anna Mitchell.
Good morning. The Senate has again failed to pass the same Republican-backed funding measure for ending the federal government shutdown. The measure failed to be passed for a ninth time yesterday, and it came after President Trump had said he will cut programs favored by Democrats, with a full list of targeted programs expected by tomorrow. U.S. service members, though, did get paychecks this week despite the government shutdown. The White House released a memo from President Trump directing the Pentagon to use unspent funds to pay the military. Those funds will be replenished once the shutdown ends. Speaker Mike Johnson warned the move is a, quote, temporary fix. President Trump says he has authorized the CIA to take action in Venezuela. Mark Mayfield reports.
Trump spoke at the White House.
I authorized for two reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the, they came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy.
In confirming the authorization on Wednesday, Trump told reporters that the second reason was the amount of drugs coming in from Venezuela. He was asked about the potential CIA operations just hours after the New York Times reported the agency had been given the green light to conduct lethal operations inside the country. The U.S. has struck several boats in the Caribbean as part of its campaign against alleged drug smugglers from Venezuela. I'm Mark Mayfield.
The patriarchs and heads of churches in Jerusalem are calling for expanded peace negotiations in the Holy Land. They released a joint statement this week rejoicing that a ceasefire is in place between Israel and Hamas. At the same time, they said, quote, "We continue to view with great concern the increasing violence against local communities in the West Bank in connection with settlement expansions there," end quote. They go on to call for an end to the occupation of both the West Bank and Gaza, leading to the establishment of a Palestinian state. They also ask for a, quote, rapid surge into the Gaza Strip and other affected communities of not only food, clean water, fuel, and medical supplies, but also temporary shelters and medical facilities, all as a prelude, they say, to a speedily enacted and exhaustive program for the massive clearing and rebuilding of destroyed homes, businesses, and civilian infrastructure, end quote. The Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors has released its second annual report today. From Vatican Radio, Devin Watkins reports.
The second annual report on safeguarding policies in the Catholic Church, published on Thursday by the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors, offers an operational vademecum drawn up by actively listening to those who have personally suffered abuse. The guidelines are intended to help ecclesial communities implement restorative measures, following step-by-step the reporting process and calling for its general simplification. Recommendations include an initial informed listening, access to information about one's case, and economic, psychological, and spiritual support. All of this is to be accompanied by transparent official statements that acknowledge the harm caused and publicly assume responsibility. Archbishop Theobald Verni, president of the Pontifical Commission, whom Pope Leo XIV appointed in July, described this mission as a perpetual pilgrimage. Among the key issues that emerged were the need for a more listening church and the lack of clear structures for reporting and whistleblowing. The report analyzes the concept of reparation, which includes both monetary reimbursement and psychological and spiritual support. The Church is thus called to issue official statements that acknowledge the harm caused and publicly accept its own responsibility. Victims, says the report, should not be left in uncertainty regarding the assumption of responsibility by perpetrators of abuse and by those who enabled or covered it up. The Commission's report proposes the creation of an international academic network involving Catholic universities specializing in human rights, abuse prevention, and safeguarding. The final part of the document focuses on the progress of the Memorare initiative set up in 2022. It has gathered dedicated funds to support churches in the Global South with limited resources in an effort to accompany survivors of clerical sexual abuse. I'm Devin Watkins.
The Blue Jays are now on the board in the American League Championship Series after bashing the Mariners 13-4 in Seattle yesterday. Toronto now trails the best-of-7 series 2-1, heading into Game 4 in Seattle today. Meanwhile, the NLCS also resumes today with the Dodgers and Brewers in Los Angeles. LA is ahead in that series 2-0. And the beloved longtime chaplain of the Loyola Chicago basketball team will be laid to rest today. Sister Jean died last week at the age of 106. She had only just recently retired from her role as chaplain. There was a visitation last night, and her mass of Christian burial takes place this morning at 10 a.m. Central Time at the Madonna della Strada Chapel on campus. The funeral will be live streamed, and if you would like to watch it, you can go to luc.edu/Sister Jean.
Pretty cool. 106 years. So
not a bad streak there.
That takes you back to what?
1916, I think.
1916, something like that? World War
1919.
1919? I mean, it's pretty incredible. Imagine how much you've seen. You went from, like, most people not really owning cars to whatever we got now. It's pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
May the souls of the faithful departed through the mercy of God rest in peace.
Amen. The Loyola Chicago, University of Loyola Chicago, has a lovely little bio obituary of Sister Jean. So she was born August 21st, 1919, joined the Sisters of Charity of the Blessed Virgin Mary in 1937. Wow.
So she was almost 100 years a sister.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was almost 90 years a sister.
It's insane.
Goodness
insane.
Gracious. What do you call it when you hit your 100th? I mean, I know what they call the 25th anniversary of something and the 50th anniversary. What do you call it when you get to the 100th anniversary of something?
Yeah, really, because 50th is golden anniversary. So is it your diamond anniversary
Platinum?
or is that 75th?
Titanium? Goodness.
Incredible. May Sister Jean rest in peace. Today is Thursday, October the 16th. It is the feast of Saint Gerard, patron of expectant mothers. Pray for us. Back with us now on the Sunrise Morning Show is Dr. John Bergsma. We've been going through his book, Jesus and the Jubilee, the Biblical Roots of the Year of God's Favor. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Anna.
So we've been going through the chapter in your book on the Essenes and their understanding of the Jubilee. And, of course, they're famous for having left us the Dead Sea Scrolls. And we left off the conversation last time we were together talking about one scroll in particular. Can you remind us what the scroll known as 11Q Melchizedek has to say about the Jubilee?
Well, it's very interesting. Anna, the Essenes were reputed to have this spirit of prophecy. And our historian of the time period, Josephus, says that they never erred. It's quite the claim.
Wow.
Especially coming from Josephus, who was a Pharisee himself, so he wasn't an Essene, but he had a lot of respect for them, said that they never erred in their prophecies. So what we have here with 11Q Melchizedek, that means it was found in the 11th cave at Qumran, and which was the last one, by the way, that they found that had any scrolls in it. And Melchizedek is the subject matter of the scroll, and it is a prophecy of the return of you might even say, a divine Melchizedek at the end of history to inaugurate a supernatural Jubilee year. And it's quite remarkable. And the monk, we might as well just call him the monk, because it was essentially a monastery, who composed this, Anna, was deriving the prophecies from Lectio. He was like doing a meditative reading of the Jubilee Year passage from Leviticus and deriving these predictions about how the future would unfold. And that's the picture he came up with. A divine Melchizedek's going to come back and proclaim this age of God's freedom.
Yeah, the lines that you're discussing here, you have them written out in the book. The interpretation is that it applies to the last days and concerns the captives, just as Isaiah said, to proclaim the Jubilee to the captives, even from the inheritance of Melchizedek. And they are the inheritance of Melchizedek, who will return them to what is rightfully theirs. He will proclaim to them the Jubilee, thereby releasing them from the debt of all their sins. Now, Melchizedek, let's talk about him for a second. He's in Genesis chapter 14 is where he shows up in the Old Testament, of course, mentioned in the book of Hebrews as well. But King of Salem, which is the old-timey name for Jerusalem, King of Salem, who was also a priest of God Most High, the one who brings out the bread and wine to bless Abram in Genesis 14, and then Abram gives him a tenth of everything. What is it? What is that everything that he gets a tenth of? I mean, what's the context in which this little bread and wine ceremony happens, Doc?
Yeah, well, we've just had the Promised Land invaded by a bunch of foreign kings from Mesopotamia, if anybody's keeping track of where they're coming from. And they abducted Abram's relatives, his nephew Lot, who had been living in Sodom and Gomorrah. And so these foreign kings had come in, taken people captive, taking them back into exile, robbing them of their goods and of their property. And Abram calls out his commandos, of whom he's got 318, so that's pretty impressive, actually, for a security detail. And Abram launches a surgical strike on these invading foreign kings, routs them in the night, drives them off, and frees all the captives and brings them back and restores them to their property. And at the high point of this event, Melchizedek, king of, as you said, Salem, Jerusalem, comes out and blesses all of the proceedings and offers a holy sacrifice of bread and wine, which, of course, as Catholics, we can't help but see the anticipation of the Eucharist in that. Mm-hmm. And I should throw something else in the mix, Anna, that the Jewish tradition held Melchizedek to be Shem, the son of Noah.
Yeah.
And this is why he has the dignity to be able to serve as priest of God Most High and bless Abram. So you'd say, well, what does this have to do with Jubilee? And it's the fact that Melchizedek blesses this event in which captives are freed and property is restored, and that is what the Jubilee was all about. And so that's the deep connection that the Essenes saw there with the Jubilee year.
Okay, but it says in this passage that I quoted, he will proclaim to them the Jubilee, thereby releasing them from the debt of all their sins. It's a little different than property and being released from physical slavery.
Absolutely. So it's so it's so provocative because the ancient Essene prophet is just seeing this supernaturalized. This is going to become transcendent. This is going to take place in the spiritual realm, so freed from the debt of sin. And he goes on to say that they're going to be released from slavery to Belial, who is an ancient name for Satan. Right. And so slavery to Satan is going to be undone. The debt of sin is going to be forgiven. And this is all going to happen when Melchizedek shows up. And then he interprets statements about God from the Old Testament as applying to Melchizedek. Melchizedek is basically God. So he's a human priest king. He's divine. And he's going to, announce this supernatural year of Jubilee to free from spiritual bondage. Well, that is so provocative.
It's such an incredible part of your book. I mean, worth the price of the book, in my mind anyway, Dr. Bergsma. I'm just fascinated by this part of Dr. John Bergsma's book, Jesus and the Jubilee, the Biblical Roots of the Year of God's Favor. It's from Emmaus Road Publishing and linked at sunrisemorningshow.com. We'll leave it there and pick it up there the next time we get together, Doc. Thank you so much.
You bet. Talk to you next time.
I look forward to it. All right, at 17 past, back with headlines right after this.
Lord, Teach Me to Pray, the Ignatian Prayer Series, can now train you and others electronically to become facilitators and bring the Ignatian way of prayer to your parish. Come to know and love Jesus Christ like never before and help others do the same. Don't pass up the opportunity to join this work of the new evangelization. Go to LordTeachMeToPray.com and click on Digital Training. That's LordTeachMeToPray.com and click on Digital Training.
Support for the Sunrise Morning Show is from Central Fabricators. In business since 1946, Central Fabricators provides engineering and consulting services and the highest level of craftsmanship in building custom equipment for the chemical, distillery, pharmaceutical, brewery, food, paper, and water treatment industries, all while staying in strict accordance with all ASME, API, and UL codes. Find out more online at centralfabricators.com. That's centralfabricators.com.
Mystic Monk Coffee has brought back their pumpkin spice blend, and unlike the competition, buying their coffee has the added bonus of supporting the Carmelite Monks of Wyoming and the Sunrise Morning Show.
Go to sunrisemorningshow.com and click the Mystic Monk link to get that or any of their other coffee blends or teas. When you check out, we earn a commission.
And there's no better vessel for your Mystic Monk pumpkin spice latte than a Sunrise Morning Show mug or travel mug. Find those in our online store.
Do pumpkin spice the Catholic way. Just head on over to sonrisemorningshow.com.
EWTN Radio posts 11 podcasts every weekday and over 60 per week. They're the perfect companion for busy Catholics everywhere. With on-demand access to audio, you can pause and pick up right where you left off anytime, anywhere. And they're all free. Subscribe by going to EWTNradio.net. Then click on podcasts. They're waiting for you. EWTN is the Global Catholic Network.
19 past, here's Anna with headlines.
President Trump says he has authorized the CIA to take action in Venezuela. The Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors has released its second annual report today. And during his general audience yesterday, Pope Leo continued his reflections on the resurrection in his series on Christ, our hope.
News at the top and bottom of each hour every weekday morning here on the Sunrise Morning Show. And of course, if you keep it tuned to EWTN all day, you catch all kinds of good stuff. And tell your friends that there's good Catholic radio in town. People are getting freaked out by everything they read on the internet. They're getting obsessed and spun sideways by the news cycle, frustrated at life. Tell them to tune in. Tell them to call Jerry and Debbie and tell them about their problems. Tell them to call Dr. Ray and tell him about their problems. Tell them to ask Dr. David Anders or Cy Kellett or Tim Staples or Jimmy Aiken about their problems. Or Deacon Harold. Tell them to tune in to Catholic Radio.
Business owners are starting to think outside the box to find new customers. You can reach millions of engaged Catholic listeners by underwriting the Sunrise Morning Show. Each weekday morning, listeners across the U.S. and around the globe can hear your message for your business, ministry, or nonprofit on the Sunrise Morning Show. To find out how it works, email me, Leah@sacredheartradio.com. That's Leah@sacredheartradio.com.
I am Father Timothy Shear, and these are Biblical Impressions. Amos is probably the best known of the minor prophets. There are 12 of them. They have this title, minor prophets, because their oracles were originally preserved on one single scroll. In the time of Amos, God's people were divided north and south. The religious center of Judah, the southern kingdom, remained Jerusalem. But the kings in the north set up rival sanctuaries to keep their people from worshiping God in the Jerusalem temple. One such sanctuary was in Bethel. In chapter 7 of his book, Amos is in Bethel, and there he has a celebrated exchange between Amos and one of these northern priests, whose name was Amaziah. This Amaziah thought Amos was just one more clever individual earning a living by saying what the royal house of the north wanted him to say. Amos makes the surprising statement that he never was a prophet. What he means is that he never was a prophet as Amaziah thinks of a prophet. If you have time, look up that wonderful passage between Amos and Amaziah. For Sacred Heart Radio, I'm Father Timothy Shear.
It is time for Bible Foods with Rita Heikenfeld from AboutEating.com, and she's always got great recipes that help us make it through the seasons. Rita, good morning.
Well, good morning, and I could not wait to talk to you today because what history there is, the recipes we're going to be sharing, and you get to talk about your granddad and grandma and potlucks. I mean, what community's about, isn't it?
Well, that's what this segment has always been about, which is not just the food, but the people you share it with, and foods that often have memories attached to them. I was recently in East Tennessee for my grandfather's funeral. My grandmother, who had played piano in her church for 70 years, passed away a few years ago. And for both of them, at the little church that they were part of, they had the funeral, of course, but then they had massive, and I mean massive, potlucks. This is not a big church, but everybody brought something. Everybody brought something they were kind of famous for within the family or within the community. And to me, Rita, this kind of, I could not help but think of something that we hear every time we go to Mass, which is whenever the priest is preparing the bread and wine to consecrate them into the Eucharist. He says something like, "Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation. Through your mercy we have the bread we offer. It's the fruit of the earth and the work of human hands." And to me, when we bring our gifts to potlucks and that, I just think about, like, it's what God gave us that we turned into something and we gave back to our family in honor of God.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, the Bible has so many wonderful passages about community and sharing. And I have to say, I know we're going to talk about okra, but you sent me a video of when your grandma passed away and talking about the potluck. I am not kidding you. I have never seen a table laden with so many good foods. It's kind of foods that crock pot, slow cooker, baked. The desserts were amazing, but it was just like you wanted a great big spoon and wanted a taste of everything.
Well,
I mean,
you have to eat in rounds when you do these things.
Well, and there were so many. It wasn't fancy food. It was the kind of food, as I said, that you want to just get a big spoon and dig in people's tried and true favorites. So, and you said this time, after you went to your grandpa's funeral, you came home with some frozen okra. Lucky you.
Well, I had to freeze it because the okra hit pretty big in East Tennessee, and it was purple okra, which I don't know if you've ever messed around with. Oh,
yes.
And so they sent me home with it. And the way that I do okra is, you know, I either fry it or I put it in gumbo. And usually the best thing to do if you got too much and you can't use it all at once is just dry it off real good and freeze it in a bag, or even freeze it on a layer in a cookie sheet and then put it in a bag. But okra, I know, is something that you wanted to do this year, but the animals got it.
Yeah, you know, we had a buffet for God's good creatures. And we grow, it's called Bubba okra. The bushes are smaller, so they're just the pods are easily picked off. But, you know, you talk about okra. It's not something that I don't think it's mainstream, and it's actually a member of the mallow, the hibiscus marshmallow family. And people don't know this, but it's got a lot of vitamin C, and you can even eat the leaves like spinach or saute them when they're young.
I did not know that.
I know, and you know, the funny thing about okra, the recipe you shared from your great Aunt Genevieve. It's okra that you basically have a coating of cornmeal and flour and salt and pepper, and then you put the okra in the bag and shake and get all the coating on, and then you fry it. I love this. Third a cup of oil, and then your great Aunt Genevieve, after it was fried, she drained it on some paper towels.
Yeah.
So delicious, so simple. And okra, people always say how it gets slimy. Well, it's got a lot of mucilaginous consistency to it. So if you cook it at a higher heat, it may not get slimy. But you were talking about freezing it, and I think what you said about laying it on a tray in a single layer is the best. That way it doesn't get all stuck together. But, okra is one of those things that if you've had it, most people love it once they've tried it. And we always had for our bazaar at Holy Trinity Church here in Batavia every year our chicken gumbo soup. That it was a recipe I developed, but there was really no recipe. We made, gallons and gallons of it for our bazaar. And it was so popular, that I developed the recipe for the home cook. And I know we've shared this recipe before, but I thought it might be fun to share it. The ingredients and the recipe will be on my site, abouteating.com. And then I want your opinion, too, because I know you would tweak this.
All right. Well, I would tweak it. There's, first of all, this is, you just talked about the two ways I eat okra is fried okra and, cornmeal and a little bit of flour, but gumbo as well. My brother makes a killer gumbo, and I got to tell you, different people like different levels of spice with it, and that's usually where the tweaking comes in.
Oh, exactly right. And the gumbo recipe that I've made for church and that I'm sharing today isn't a true gumbo, but it's just like a real simple chicken gumbo. So let's just talk a little bit about the recipe, and then you tell me.
Yeah, you got to be careful here because our Catholic community radio listeners in New Orleans and Baton Rouge are going to get antsy if you're not making it a true gumbo.
Oh, my gosh, yeah. Well, that's when you have to share your brother's recipe because, again, this is sort of a hack on gumbo. And basically, you're going to fill a pan with olive oil and saute some chicken. And then you're going to add some bell pepper, onion, celery, garlic, and basil. And then after it cooks a bit, we're going to pour in some broth and rice and tomatoes. Cook it until the rice is done, and basically that is it. It's really delicious. And you would probably add some red pepper flakes to that, I'm thinking.
Of course. Fresh from my garden. I fried them up and got them in a shaker.
Oh, very good.
From the cayennes I grew this summer, so good stuff. And if you want to find the recipe to tweak it, or if you're from one of those Louisiana affiliates on Catholic Community Radio and you want to critique it, you could go to sunrisemorningshow.com and find that gumbo recipe in the show notes. Rita Heikenfeld, thank you as always. Have a wonderful day.
I will. And again, thanks for sharing about Grandpa.
1:30. Here's Anna with news.
Good morning. The Senate has again failed to pass the Republican-backed funding measure for ending the federal government shutdown. It's failed to be passed for a ninth time yesterday. It came after President Trump had said he would cut programs favored by Democrats, with a full list of targeted programs expected tomorrow. Meanwhile, U.S. service members did get paychecks this week despite the shutdown. The White House released a memo from President Trump directing the Pentagon to use unspent funds to pay the military. Those funds will be replenished once the shutdown ends. Speaker Mike Johnson warned, though, the move is a temporary fix. President Trump says he has authorized the CIA to take action in Venezuela. Mark Mayfield reports.
Trump spoke at the White House.
I authorized for two reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy.
In confirming the authorization on Wednesday, Trump told reporters that the second reason was the amount of drugs coming in from Venezuela. He was asked about the potential CIA operations just hours after the New York Times reported the agency had been given the green light to conduct lethal operations inside the country. The U.S. has struck several boats in the Caribbean as part of his campaign against alleged drug smugglers from Venezuela. I'm Mark Mayfield.
The patriarchs and heads of churches in Jerusalem are calling for expanded peace negotiations in the Holy Land. They've released a statement this week rejoicing that a ceasefire is in place. At the same time, they said, quote, "We continue to view with great concern the increasing violence against local communities in the West Bank in connection with settlement expansions there," end quote. They go on to call for an end to the occupation of both the West Bank and Gaza, leading to the establishment of a Palestinian two-state solution. During his general audience yesterday, Pope Leo continued to reflect on the resurrection as he continued his catechesis series on Christ our Hope. From Vatican Radio, Deborah Castellano-Lubov reports.
Today we consider how the resurrection of Jesus fulfills the desires of every human heart.
Reflecting on the realities of human experience, the Pope acknowledged the often conflicting emotions and limitations that mark our lives.
We recognize an inexhaustible longing in our hearts for something more.
Pope Leo noted that this tension reveals both our limitations and our deep desire to transcend them. We come to terms with what we lack, while feeling an irrepressible urge to overcome it. We sense deep down, he noted, that something is always missing. What is missing, Pope Leo explained, is Jesus. He is always pure, always present, and always ready for those who thirst. Jesus in his resurrection, the Pope said, has guaranteed a permanent source of life, and he alone can refresh us and offer us peace that endures into eternity. Jesus does not offer answers from above, detached from our pain, the Pope explained. Instead, he walks with us on a road that's often difficult, painful, and mysterious. When our flask is empty, when our thirst is unbearable, the Pope reminded, only he can fill it. The Holy Father emphasized that Jesus is not only our companion, but our destination. Without his love, he said, life can become aimless, a tragic journey without a true end. But we are not to remain fallen, the Pope said. Rather, we are to rise again and stand on our feet. For the risen Christ guarantees that we will arrive and leads us home to a place where we are awaited, loved, and saved.
It is only the resurrected Jesus who can give the true and lasting peace that sustains and fills us.
I'm Deborah Castellano-Lubov.
The beloved longtime chaplain of the Loyola University of Chicago basketball team will be laid to rest today. Sister Jean died last week at the age of 106. She had only just recently retired from her role as chaplain of the team. There was a visitation last night on campus, and her Mass of Christian burial will take place this morning at 10 a.m. Central Time at the Madonna della Strada Chapel on campus. The funeral will be live streamed at luc.edu/Sister Jean. That's the news on the Sunrise Morning Show. It's 35 past the hour.
The Sunrise Morning Show.
Waking up with Mystic Monk coffee is definitely a better way to start your day. Not only are you getting a great cup of coffee, but your purchase helps support the life of the Carmelite monks of Wyoming.
And your purchase can also help our work. All you need to do is go first to sonrisemorningshow.com. When you click the Mystic Monk link on the side of the page, we earn a commission.
Support the monks and support the Sunrise Morning Show. Click the Mystic Monk link at sonrisemorningshow.com.
That's sonrisemorningshow.com.
Business owners are starting to think outside the box to find new customers. You can reach millions of engaged Catholic listeners by underwriting the Sunrise Morning Show. Each weekday morning, listeners across the U.S. and around the globe can hear your message for your business, ministry, or nonprofit on the Sunrise Morning Show. To find out how it works, email me, Leah@sacredheartradio.com. That's Leah@sacredheartradio.com.
O Sacred Heart of Jesus, I place my trust in Thee. O Sacred Heart of Jesus, I place my trust in Thee. Whatever may befall me, Lord, though dark the hour may be, in all my woes, in all my joys, though naught but grief I see, O Sacred Heart of Jesus, I place my trust in Thee. When those I loved have passed away, and I am sore distressed, O Sacred Heart of Jesus, I fly to Thee for rest. In all my trials, great or small, my confidence shall be unshaken as I cry, Dear Lord, I place my trust in Thee. This is my one sweet prayer, dear Lord, my faith, my trust, my love. but most of all in that last hour when death points up above. O sweet Savior, may thy face smile on my soul all free. Oh, may I cry with rapturous love, I place my trust in thee.
The Sunrise Morning Show continues. I'm Matt Swaim, joined now by Gary Michuta from Hands On Apologetics to answer a question that you may have had, but have never known exactly how to address. Gary, good morning.
Good morning, Matt.
So, we know that the Jews were not able to execute Jesus. So, they figured out a way to get Pilate to execute him so that the Romans would do it. So how in the world did the Jews stone Stephen to death if they weren't allowed to execute capital punishment?
Aha, yes. And that's where Bible background's really important, right? Now, of course, Jesus' death took place during the reign of Pontius Pilate. So we're going to have to talk a little bit about Pilate. He was the 5th prefect of Judea. And under the Roman providential system, the Roman Senate had jurisdiction over all the peaceful provinces of the empire. But the ones that are less stable, they appointed a procurator who basically had Roman troops at his disposal, and that way they could react quickly to disturbances and suppress disturbances. So that's why Pilate was there, right, because this was somewhat of an unstable thing. So only the Roman authorities could administer capital punishment. Hence, Jesus could not be executed by the Jews because we find the Jews taking them to Pilate, and Pilate says, "Judge by your law," and they say, "Well, we don't have the power to execute." Okay, so the question then is, what happens to Pilate after Jesus' death? Last time we hear about him is after they took down Jesus' body, and the disciples asked if they could take it down. Then he disappears from the scene. So we learned from the first century Jewish historian Josephus what happens, and ultimately, Matt, it's interesting because you would think if to move up in the leadership in Rome, you would be a really good administrator, right, with no problems and living, having everything nice and peaceful. But there's another career track where you make things horrible, and then you call the troops to quash the problem, and then you look to Rome as, see, look at how strong I am, that how loyal I am. I'm crushing all these rebellions for you. And that's kind of like what Pilate did. Pilate was horrible. He would instigate the Jews to, they'd push them and shove them, hoping that they would push back so he could quash them. And ultimately, that backfires because he actually ended up slaughtering a large number of Samaritans. And so the Samaritans sent an embassy to Vitellius, who was the president of Syria, and they accused Pilate of murder. So Josephus says that Vitellius sent Marcellinus, his friend, to take charge over the affairs of Judea, and he ordered Pilate to go to Rome to answer these accusations from the Samaritans. So Pilate heads over to Rome, but before he gets there, the Emperor Tiberius dies. So there's this short span of time where Judea is not under a procurator, and it's basically ungoverned. And that's roughly around AD 36, which just so happens to be about the same time that Stephen is executed. So you can kind of see, the old saying, when the cat's away, the mice will play.
Well, it answers another question.
Period.
So not only is Stephen stoned to death, but Paul sets out on a mission to do the same to a bunch of other people. You would think that he would be in the crosshairs of the Romans, for violating all these laws about trying to carry out his own punishment, when that's the purview of the Roman authorities who are overseeing things. So it seems to me like the Romans had a bigger problem on their hands, and that's why Stephen was stoned and Paul was able to go on his crusade.
Exactly. Yeah, and So it must have been a horrific time for Christians to live, during this time. First, you have this maniac Pilate who's trying to provoke the Jews to revolt, and then he's gone, and then now the shackles are off for the authorities to go after Christians, starting with St. Stephen and, of course, like you said, other Christians as well. And all of that is while Pilate's gone and there's this power vacuum. And the funny thing is, if you didn't know this background, you would end up with this really weird situation where the Jews don't have authority to execute. Yes, they do execute Stephen.
Well, what's interesting, too, is this is something that is detailed in Luke's account of the early church in the book of Acts. And Luke actually does something sort of weird in his gospel as well. And it's the boring parts that are the most interesting parts of the story of Jesus, and not just when he is born, but when he comes to public ministry, and a few other cases along the way in the history where Luke will do what sounds like some sort of side trail. He's like, well, so-and-so was the governor of such and such, and somebody was the procurator, and this person was in charge of this, and it was the 17th year of blah, blah, blah. And people might be saying, like, why does Luke go off and tell us all this? Why doesn't he just tell us what Jesus did? Right? But Luke is trying to help us understand, like, some of these dynamics, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because often when we approach the Bible, it's almost like we approach it as a story that somebody is telling and not as real history. Because the background behind all the things we read in the New Testament, there's political background, there's social background. Like, for example, the Samaritans. Why were the Samaritans hated? The New Testament doesn't really tell us. All we know is that there is a lot of antagonism between Jews and Samaritans. Well, it presumes that you understand the background because these were real people and real situations, and this really existed. And you're absolutely right. That's true even for Roman politics and the situation that occurs in the New Testament.
Yeah. It is really interesting to note, but also really pretty powerful. If Luke would have been a traveling companion of Paul, right, and someone who would have known both Mary and Paul, as we get a very clear sense of from both his gospel and the book of Acts, then how interesting to note that the stories that we have about the stoning of Stephen would have probably been relayed to Luke firsthand by Paul himself.
Yeah.
That to me is one of the wildest details.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, and that gives you an insight into, what was the motivation behind this, and why is it that Saul ends up being the guy that gets the commission from the Sanhedrin to arrest Christians and so on. You're absolutely right, because that would be a first-hand account by Saul given to Luke, and Luke, of course, records it in Acts.
Yeah, just how there's certain things that you can't really know about the childhood of God, the childhood of Jesus, unless you ask his mother Mary, and that's what you get in Luke's gospel. There's certain things you can't really know about Paul's conversion and the circumstances leading up to it, unless you ask Paul, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's pretty cool. Well, Gary, if people want to read your book, Behind the Bible, What the Bible Assumes You Already Know, or check you out at Hands on Apologetics, how do they do so?
Sure, just go to my website at www.handsonapologetics.com.
Linked at sunrisemorningshow.com. While you're there, subscribe and get the show notes delivered to your inbox daily. Have a great day, Gary, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, you too, Matt.
All right, it's quarter till. We'll talk artificial intelligence and theology of the body with Courtney Brown from Ruah Woods next. Looking for a life-changing experience that will strengthen your child's faith and immerse them in a joyful Catholic culture? Send them to Christendom College's high school summer program, The Best Week Ever. Located in the beautiful Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, The Best Week Ever has become one of the most popular, well-attended, and highly ranked programs of its kind. To apply or find out more, visit thebestweekever.com. Thebestweekever.com. That's thebestweekever.com.
Support for the Sunrise Morning Show is from Visiting Angels, helping seniors remain independent and safe in their own home. Visiting Angels compassionate caregivers provide one-on-one essential home care services, including hygiene, meals, light housework, companionship, and more. For short or long-term assistance, even services up to 24 hours a day, Visiting Angels is there. More information is at visitingangels.com. That's visitingangels.com. Franchise opportunities available.
It's the season of chunky soup and chunky sweaters, which means it's also pumpkin coffee season. And the Mystic Monks have their pumpkin spice blend in stock and ready for you to enjoy.
And when you go to the Monks through sunrisemorningshow.com, we earn a commission on any flavor coffee or tea that you buy.
Why shell out $5 for a tall PSL when you can customize your own at home and drink it from a Sunrise Morning Show mug that you can find in our online store?
Get a mug and link to Mystic Monk Coffee through sunrisemorningshow.com.
The most original Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
Apparently, our Christianity demands humility, it demands compassion, demands that you love and pray for your enemy. And we don't like that too much either.
Mother Angelica Live Classics. Every morning, 2 Eastern, on EWTN Radio.
I'm Deacon Harold Bergsma. Join me for Beacon of Truth today at 4 p.m. Eastern.
On the next Beacon of Truth, St. John Paul the Great and Soulful Psalm 56.
Now back to the Sunrise Morning Show.
12 till, here's Anna with headlines.
President Trump says he has authorized the CIA to take action in Venezuela. The patriarchs and heads of churches in Jerusalem are rejoicing that there's a ceasefire in place between Israel and Hamas, but are also calling for expanded peace negotiations in the Holy Land aimed at a two-state solution. And the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors has released its second annual safeguarding report today. You can hear news at the top and bottom of each hour right here on the Sunrise Morning Show. Back with us now on the Sunrise Morning Show is Courtney Brown. He's Executive Director of the Ruah Woods Institute. You can learn more about their K-12 Theology of the Body curriculum at ruahwoodsinstitute.org. Good morning, Courtney.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing fine. And, you know, I know you've been thinking and speaking quite a bit about some really big questions that we should be asking as Catholics with the rise of artificial intelligence. In fact, you had so much to say, you had to call me yesterday to talk about it rather than texting. That gives listeners a little indication of how much your mind has been working on this. But, you know, I think, Courtney, especially in light of the theology of the body, I think the foundational question that we need to consider here is, what does it mean to be a person? And I can't believe that that's even a question that we have to ask.
It is. That's a great point. It is a question that fundamentally we do have to ask. What do we mean by personhood? Because you know, our great St. Thomas Aquinas defined personhood based off of what the philosopher Boethius is the substance of rational nature. And when you take that definition, and Aquinas takes it into a further, when you go to the human person, there's a whole element of intellect here that we have and that we share with, you know, in a certain respect, personhood, that God has. God's a person, the Holy Spirit, you know, we talked about that in our faith, but the angels are persons. So what AI, as it gets better in terms of its own intelligence, is its capacity right now is machine thinking, but does it get to a level of thinking where it thinks for itself? It starts to pose that question. We really need to understand what we mean by personhood. And the one thing for sure that we do know is that it'll never be a human person because it's not a human body, right? It wasn't created to be a human person. But the idea of what does it actually mean to be human comes into play too as well, because as you know, our culture has a tendency to give rights to everything, you know. So
except the unborn child. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, exactly. And essentially what I mean by that is the type of conversations we'll be having is like, well, what do we mean by personhood? What do we mean by human? What does it mean to be a human person? I'm sorry about my son there. He's a little bit loud right now. But, yeah, so these are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. And how do we respond to that? And we need to get more into it. And that's kind of what I was calling you about yesterday, is just diving into these concepts and really articulating them to the point where the common Catholic or the common Christian can say, no. What we're talking about here is a created intelligence that's not the same thing, or this is what we mean by personhood.
Well, it's interesting because we have an idea of what personhood means as Catholics, as you were just describing with Aquinas and Boethius. But much of society, I think, would go to Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am. And the implications for artificial intelligence in that regard and machine thinking kind of takes us to a level that is rather disturbing, I think, in terms of whether society at some point might actually think of AI as being a quote-unquote person.
Yeah, that's a good point, too, because I know Descartes, in some ways, some call him the father of the modern thinking.
Yeah.
Because it removed in his deconstruction of the person, what he was essentially trying to come to the foundational principle. So in Descartes' mind, he was trying to deconstruct this to the most basic level. And he came to a conclusion. He was Catholic, and he wasn't an atheist by any stretch. But he came to this conclusion that we're the foundational principle, which again is the whole problem, that we're not the foundational principle. It's the fact that we were created by God, who infused his life into us. So he created us for himself and to be relationship into himself. So Descartes moved down to the self instead of the most foundational principle is a God who breathed his life into us. And AI's creation is us. We create AI. So what is the image and likeness, if you will, so to speak, analogously, of AI? And unfortunately, it's efficiency, and it's to make our lives easier, but it's not to bear relationship. But we're relational beings. So we will look at AI in a relational way, but AI is not designed for relationship. So you're going to, it puts us into these kind of let's think through this a little bit more and be able to articulate what ultimately means that what we need to be prepared for is just how do we continue to really focus on being human. And the more technology advances and the more that it gets faster and more efficient, we really should probably dive into more being the human endeavors, like work.
Absolutely.
Like chores. Don't let your kids, if all of a sudden, Roombas become robots and they cook food and do all these things, that maybe you could be what? We're going to still do chores in our family.
Yeah.
So,
I think that would be a great idea, certainly for the development of the human person in so many regards. I mean, setting aside artificial intelligence, but you talk about AI not being created for relationships, and yet so many treat AIs as a relational being, right? You can have a conversation with ChatGPT or Claude, which is one of the more popular AI systems. I have a friend that talks about Claude as if Claude is a person, Claude told me this and that. And it's just oh my gosh, no, go talk to a real human being.
Yeah. And that you make another point too. The language builds culture too. It's it has this power behind it, and it's so easy to call these things she's and he's and give it a certain type of subject.
Well, everybody
nature.
Gets to choose their own pronouns now, right? So why not AI? Go ahead.
And that, like Alexa, it just means you have to be more intentional about how we approach these things, and that's okay. It's the same thing with how we are with any, not that AI is a sin, that's not my point, but when you have to overcome a sin, you have to be intentional about your behavior prior, afterwards, and it's the same thing here, that we just diving more into understanding what the church has always taught about the human person, what we mean by personhood, what is in soul, all these things. And these are topics that, I'm starting to dive more into to be able to articulate more clearly for teachers, students, parents, and families. So when these things come, we're able to kind of manage and keep moving forward and know that our home is with God in heaven.
Well, I will look forward to having more conversations like this with you as we move forward. If you'd like to have Courtney Brown speak at your school or parish, you can go to ruahwoodsinstitute.org and connect with them and talk to Courtney that way. Courtney, thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you.
You too. Thank you. All right, that'll do it for this national edition of the Sunrise Morning Show. May God bless you and keep you and grant you his peace.